Hey there, it's Pete Thorn. This is another Wednesday Q&A. This is episode number 5. So in these videos, I answer questions that you ask me via sending me an email to my Facebook music page, which is facebook.com/guitarnerd. Send me an email there and I'll try and get to your question in one of these videos. Okay, let's get on to question number 1. This fellow's name is spelled J-E-R-O. I'm not sure if you pronounce that Jero or Euro or not sure, sorry. But getting on to the question, he says, he's wondering about EQing an amp in a room for live or rehearsal settings. How do I approach EQing an amp, kind of in a live setting, I guess? Well, yeah, depending on the room, it can really affect the tone of the amp, obviously, and the sound that you want to hear. I find the one main thing that I try and do is control the top end. If it's a harder room, kind of with harder surfaces and more sort of parallel walls, a hard stage, maybe with no carpet or anything like that, it can be a little tough sometimes. You might want to back down treble and presence settings, especially in those types of environments. One thing that's really, really helpful is a little trick, and many clubs have these. Ask for a drum rug if you've got kind of a hard surface stage that's not carpeted or something like that. If it's a real reflective surface, ask the local crew if they've got a rug and that's like a small rug that might be like 3 feet by 5 feet or a little bigger or something, that they'll usually have on hand for drummers to set their drum sets up on. Maybe they've got an extra one of those lying around. And I find putting one of those in front of the speaker cabinet and then putting your mics and stuff on top of that, just right in front of the cabinet on stage, is really helpful to control kind of those early reflections. Your cabinet will kind of send out the sound, hit the stage, and then bounce up into your ear and be a little harsh. Just putting a rug down right in front of the amp can be really helpful. So that's a good tip. But yeah, other than that, basically it's like just controlling that top end, making sure that treble and presence aren't cranked up too high if it's a more reflective kind of stage. And yeah, you'll find that in a dead room, carpet stage, and maybe a great big room or something like that, you can get away with a lot more top end and stuff like that. Now, of course, this is something that you want to work with the sound man too. If you're playing a gig where there is a sound guy out there that's miking up your amp, make sure that the sound is working for the sound guy in the house, and that you're not, adding too much top end or cutting too much out for the house sound, because ultimately that's the most important thing, what your audience is hearing. Question number 2 comes from Gary Simonelli. He wants to know, what is the acoustic treatment that I use in my studio? Well, all the panels in my studio were custom made for that particular room, and now I've actually moved the studio, moved them to a different room. So, but they still work and sound just great in that room. But yeah, they were all actually custom built for me. Basically, what I've got is bass traps in all the corners, and then I've got some other panels on the walls to kind of control reflective surfaces, because my rooms that I work in are not perfect. They're basically square or rectangular, which is what you actually don't want in a studio. You'll notice most commercial studios have no parallel walls and a lot of sort of surfaces that are not right angles to one another. And the reason is that when you get parallel walls in a studio, it creates standing waves and weird frequency buildups and things like that. So when they design professional recording studios, they've always got a lot of angles going on and stuff like that. Well, the rooms that I work in are less than perfect. So I need to try and kind of break up those angles via adding panels and things. So the big wood things that are on either side of me in my studio, what those are is they're actually diffusers and also bass traps. So they're meant to capture bass up to about 350 hertz and then just to diffuse above that and not soak up too much top end, because you want a little bit of life and reflection left in there. So they've got all those kind of wood slats on them that are sort of bent at slightly different angles, and they sort of come in and out. You can't really tell that probably from these videos, but they do. And yeah, those things sound just great on either side of my mix position. They kind of fan out like this, and make it so there's no parallel surfaces right there. And then yeah, bass traps in all the corners, which is basically they're just meant to soak up. Bass builds up for some reason in the corners of rooms, and it can create kind of havoc when you're trying to mix and really hear what's going on with the low end in a mix, or when you're dialing in tones. So you want to soak up as much of that extra sort of bass buildup as possible. So traps in the corners, got that going on too. What would I recommend as far as a commercially available thing, something that you can get yourself? There's this great online resource, actually a terrific online store called ATS Acoustics. So go to atsacoustics.com and look at some of the stuff they offer. Really, really reasonable prices. I used to use their panels in my old old 2 studios ago, like when I was in a little house actually, and I bought a bunch of panels from ATS, used some of their bass traps and some of their 24 by 48 2-inch thick diffusers and things like that. And I thought that stuff was just great. So yeah, check out atsacoustics.com for a sort of reasonably priced and easily available solution to treating any room. Question number 3 comes from a guy with a great name. I'm not sure if this is your real name, but his name is Maurice Pickles. I love it. He says he wants to know what is the best EVH amp, like to get the Eddie Van Halen tone, I guess. Is it available as a combo, and can you get the brown sound without effects, or do you still need to buy a phaser? Any other tips for reaching EVH nirvana? Well, honestly, the most important thing is to practice playing that style correctly. If you have that sound in your fingers, and that means that you really have to work at it, because he's a very, very difficult guitar player to emulate, that is 90% of it right there. So moving beyond that, yeah, the phaser and flanger were very important components in Eddie Van Halen's sound. I do believe they're used a lot throughout all the different eras of Van Halen, so having those is a really good idea. And the signature EVH flanger and EVH phaser are just terrific. They totally cop that early thing. Do a great job getting those tones. So don't even look beyond. You don't need to get some other version of those effects units. Those work just great. And then as far as an amp goes, you know, I did that original EVH eruption lesson, and I used the EVH amplifier. Back then I was using it on tour with Chris Cornell, actually, and that was a terrific sounding amp, and I thought I was able to get really, really close to Ed's tone, close enough anyway for all intents and purposes, using channel 2 of the EVH 5150 amplifier. Now there's different versions of that amp out now, and you know, check those out. I haven't actually checked into the Lunchbox one or the 50 watt version of the head or the combos, but you know, you should just probably go check those out and see what they sound like to you. I think they're probably really, really great products, and they're designed by the man. And I remember plugging into the head the first time I was in Guitar Center, and I plugged into the EVH 100 watt amp, and I dialed up channel 2 because I'd heard that was kind of the channel to go to for the classic tone, and I was really knocked out the first time I played through it. I thought it just sounded great, and harmonics seemed to just jump off the fingerboard, you know, with that channel 2. And it wasn't too gainy or anything like that. It sounded just right. Channel 3 in that amp has a lot of gain, and it's kind of a different kind of modern thing, but the channel 2, the blue channel, really, really great for that tone, I think. So beyond that, you can of course go the vintage plexi route, and you know, Sir SL68, you could do a lot worse than that. I can get very, very close to that sound with that amp. It's basically a 68 plexi, and you've got a low voltage mode on it, and things like that. And that amp is just a stunning sounding amplifier. I use it all the time, and so that's another way to go. But yeah, just have fun with it, and don't worry too much about it. I mean, practicing his style is the most important thing, and that's really where the fun is. And beyond that, it's like, you know, the tone aspect of it is like sort of like a fun hobby portion, I think. But getting the licks under your fingers and stuff, and really being able to cop that style is the most important thing to the sound. He's such a unique, fantastic guitar player, really big influence on me, and a good pal of mine as well. I love the guy. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about him and what he's done for guitar. So anyway, yeah, that's my answer. Okay, question number 4. It's so funny. This comes from a guy named Juiced, and this is literally the next question in my email after the last one. He says, what are your settings for the EVH Brown sound on the Sir PT100 using a Strat with an SSV? That's a Sir humbucker. Obviously, the EVH tone, the mythical EVH tone, is still very popular out there. So yeah, on the PT100, what I would do is I'd use channel 2, and I would set it up with the gain on about 5 or 6, probably about 6, and bass on 4, mids on 4, treble anywhere between 5 and 7, depending on the cabinet you're using, speakers you're using. I'd have the presence on about 5 or 6, and the feedback control, which is very important to the tone of the amp, you could run it anywhere from like about 2 or 2.5 on up to 5. At the lower settings, it's going to be spongier and squishier, and a little darker sounding, a little more vintage. As you turn it up to about 5, it's less negative feedback in the power section of the amp, and it'll open the amp up and make it a little bolder. So just set it to taste. Kind of easier to play down low, I find, but it's a little more bold and a little more aggressive as you turn it up. So you just got to find that balance. Also important to the Van Halen tone were, as I said in the last question, the phaser and flanger. So I would get a phase 90 and a EVH flanger as well. And you might want to look into. Oh, you said you were using a delay actually in your email here, a flashback delay. So that's great for a bit of echo. Some of those Van Halen songs like On Fire and stuff have that echo slapping back, or Ain't Talking About Love. There's an echo in there, so you want to use that flashback delay set to maybe around 300 milliseconds. Would be a good sort of basic echo to use. And then if you can, maybe implement some plate reverb too. Put it in the loop of the PT100. It'll sound great. And yeah, because on the studio recordings anyway, there was a healthy dose of chamber or plate reverb, some say. So yeah, implement that too. And that should get you pretty much in the ballpark. Other big factor is greenback speakers. You want to use a 25 watt greenback style speaker, preferably in a 412 cabinet, but it can be in like a 212 or 112 too. And that really gets you that sort of woody distortion thing. Greenbacks, got to use those. They're actually really crucial and key to that sound, I think. Question number 5 comes from Eduardo Day. He has a custom audio PT100. And he says it's the best amp he's ever heard. Cool. Awesome. Always good when you're happy with your gear. And he wants to know what the difference is between the CAE or Custom Audio Electronics PT100 and the SUR PT100. He says I also noticed that he notices that I use the clean channel with pedals, and is it the same on the CAE version to the SUR PT? So basically, differences are this. The clean channel is quite close, actually, between the two amps. We did tweak it a little bit, so the circuit's a little bit different. There's a little less bass on the in the preamp on the SUR version, but really the clean channels are quite close between the two amps. So the main differences between the CAE version and the newer SUR version of the PT amp are, just off the top of my head, circuit changes for sure on channel 1, also more circuit changes on channel 2. We really honed in the distortion circuit on channel 2 and 3 to be a little bit more to what I like. It's a little bit more old school plexi, and we also made it really friendly, the EQ especially on channel 2 and 3, as far as using the amp with different speaker cabinets. There's a lot of range on the treble control now, so if you're using V30s or greenbacks or whatever you want to use, you can really dial it in with the EQ. There's also a brand new boost on the amp, which is a MOSFET style boost as opposed to the old tube boost. Comes in a completely different place in the circuit. You can use the boost on the SUR version of the amp in front of all 3 channels, and it's foot switchable in front of all 3 channels. The boost is super cool. It's not tube, it's MOSFET, but it runs at high voltage, obviously, off the amplifier, so it's like having an incredible, awesome MOSFET overdrive pedal in the amp that's running at like 250 volts at high voltage, so it's got tons of headroom. And when you turn it on, it just sounds like it's part of the tone. It just sort of really bonds with the amp and sounds very cool. So yeah, boost is great. Okay, what else? MIDI. So we added MIDI switching. You got this great MIDI foot switch that comes with the amp now, where you can change all 3 channels and then turn on and off the boost. And you can also program the boost to come on with any one of the channels. You can also use it with any MIDI foot switch or loop switcher, that kind of thing. It's very flexible. So the MIDI switching is really a huge bonus. We changed the output transformer on the amp. It's a 1.5-inch stacked output transformer now, and it's supposed to be like a transformer from an old plexi. So once again, we went that route with the tone. And the effects loop is updated and extremely cool. You can use it in series or parallel. It's got an instrument or line level switch on it, so you can run the amp with pedals or with rack +4 line level effects in the loop. I think those are the major changes that come to mind. I might have left something out, but I don't think so. So that's the difference. The original amp is a terrific amp. It's no slouch at all, and I still have that amp and love it. And the new one, just an evolution, really. Okay, so I'm going to answer a 6th question in this video as a little bonus, just because I answered 2 about my own amp, and I don't want to sound like I'm just promoting my amp in these Q&A videos. So this question is coming from David Bruner, and he asks a really terrific question, actually. He says, have I ever gotten caught up in being competitive as a guitar player, the sort of I'm better, faster, more creative than the next guy sort of mentality? And if so, does it still sometimes happen? And how did I get past it? He says everybody has insecurities from time to time, right? And I agree. Yes, we all do. We're all human. And then he kind of has another sort of question alongside of that, which is, do I get more satisfaction out of someone complimenting my playing or telling me that they love a song that I've written? So to answer that first, I would say probably if somebody compliments a song, that's probably a higher compliment to me, because writing a song is sort of complete piece of music generally means that you spoke to somebody on some sort of emotional level, and you kind of move them with a piece of music that you wrote, and that the sort of overall song package, I guess, is a more powerful thing to me. So that, I guess, that would be my preferred compliment. Although I love it if people say they like my playing too. Okay, so sort of segueing out of that into the into your initial question, do I ever get competitive? I long ago realized that I'm never going to be the fastest or, most flashy or most technically competent or whatever. That's just, think about all the Sir endorsees, right? You go to a NAMM show and you got to stand on stage next to like Ian Thornley, Andy Wood. For a long time, it was Guthrie Govan was there too. It's just like these guys are going to shred your ass into the ground, and that's what's going to happen if you try and like go toe to toe with them in some sort of head cutting competition. So I long ago realized that that's just not my bag. What I can do is sort of try and be the best me that I can be, which means get in touch with emotion and feeling of what you want to say on the guitar, and that to me is so much more powerful anyway than trying to impress people with flashy licks or whatever, and be competitive in that regard. When you take the flash out of it and you just worry about getting in touch with what it is you want to say on the guitar, you think about players like Jeff Beck, Jimi Hendrix, for modern guys like I think about Mike Landau. Steve Vai's a great example. You can go see Steve Vai play, and many times he does like NAMM show gigs or things like that where there'll be a lot of other guitar players on the same bill, and then he comes out and plays, and he always stands apart to me because he is such a master at communicating on the guitar. He understands dynamics and flow, and he brings it way, way down, and then he just rips when it's time to rip. And he's like a master showman, and he really takes you on a ride with his playing, musically and spiritually and emotionally and everything else. Whether or not his bag is your thing, if you've never seen him, go see him. I've never seen anybody walk away from seeing that guy live and say, like, yeah, didn't get it. I mean, he will move you, just with his skill and kind of he's really humorous on guitar. I like that too. There's a lot of humor in his playing, so that's a lot of fun. So anyway, I digress. But basically, what I'm getting at is all you can do is be the best you can be. Work on your strengths, focus on those, and work on conveying emotion and moving people with the guitar and saying something. Think about instead of playing guitar, if you were a singer, would you try and just sing like crazy arpeggios and try and blow people away with your technique, or would you try and convey through melody and just through emoting something powerful? I mean, when we think about singers like John Lennon or Bob Dylan or Hendrix, I mean, these guys weren't like technically amazing singers, whatever that means. But they moved generations of people with what they said and how they said it and how they sung songs. And that is, to me, so much more powerful. And the guitar is just another, it's like the voice. So why has it got to be some contest technically? That's like sports to me. That's like taking an art form and trying to turn it into a sport, which is, I don't really see the point. So yeah, the guys that move me on guitar, even if they are technical players like, Jeff Beck, Eddie Van Halen for sure, Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and for modern players, Eric Johnson, Steve Vai. I love the way Ian Thornley plays. These are guys that really take me on a ride emotionally with their playing, and they know how the ebb and flow and dynamics, and when to just rip and when to let one note just take you on a ride. So yeah, getting in touch with that side of it is what it's all about to me. So just to close out the video, I'll say one more thing on this same subject, and that's that songwriting is so important. In the last Q&A, I talked about the Beatles a little bit and studying their song forms and their melodies and stuff and learning how all those things fit together to make a good song. I feel like it's somewhat lacking in the instrumental guitar medium these days is, you know, just really, really strong songwriting is where it is at. When you look at the guitar songs that have connected with people over the years, like Because We've Ended as Lovers by Jeff Beck. Okay, beautiful melody, one of the most beautiful melodies I've ever heard, and especially with the changes, it's just gorgeous. He's conveying something with that song, and it's in the instrumental guitar medium. That's really special to me. You know, in this day and age, it's like it's gotten lost a little bit, I feel like. And, you know, that song will speak to everybody from young people to old people, men, women, across all kinds of different barriers, you know, whereas a lot of instrumental guitar seems to be geared towards teenage boys to me. You know, that sort of 13 to 17-year-old demographic, sweep picking arpeggios and play as fast as you can, very aggressive and that kind of thing. And I think it's time that we made instrumental guitar a little bit more interesting and got back to some of those roots. You know, you think about Jimi Hendrix or you know, some of Stevie Ray Vaughan, what he did, what's that song, Riviera Paradise? Oh my God, I mean, that's instrumental guitar, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful song. That's what really speaks to me, which isn't to say you can't write an aggressive song and kill it. Think about Satch Boogie or like the Attitude Song by Steve Vai is a good example, you know. These types of songs that where you're conveying emotion, good songwriting, and great chops, of course, you know, but you put it all together in a package that pretty much anybody could listen to, not necessarily a guitar player. That to me is where it's at. You know, that's what's key. You just want to make good music. Maybe one of the biggest compliments to me is when I get a compliment from people that are watching my video and they say sometimes, yeah, my wife even stuck her head in from the other room and said, who's that guy playing? I like that, you know, and I like that, you know, that somebody would dig my stuff that isn't necessarily into the instrumental guitar genre or whatever, because it's all just music, and, you know, you want to connect with people artistically with whatever it is you've got to say, and not necessarily just be guitar players. Okay, that's enough. Please hit subscribe if you haven't. Come back and see me for more of these Q&A videos, more gear demos and lessons and all that good stuff. I really appreciate you watching my videos. I'm Pete Thorn. Take it easy.